Santo, I knew you well. Okay, people, finally, let's take a quick look at the Hasbro Star Wars Black Series Book of Boba Fett Krssantan. I love this character. The design, the demeanor. I mean, what's not to love about a big shaggy Wookiee with knuckle dusters? And in my quest to have him in my display, I've made 2 customs. The first one I was semi-happy with. It was a learning experience, but I ended up trashing it, making a second one, which was more of an adventure, and I'm pretty happy with it. We'll drag it out here in a minute. But there's something to be said about a factory piece, you know, something that you can move around, throw around, drop off the side of a table, something you can play with. And I know a lot of people make customs that are playable. I'm not made that way. I'm too impatient. When I decided to create, it's make it, put it on the shelf. Yes, it exists. But this can be moved around. This can be... Looking at the package, you have this nice promo shot of Krssantan and then the greenness of the Book of Boba Fett stripe packaging. On the side, on the back, the same promo shot with a bio of Krssantan. Includes figure and accessory. Warning, small parts may be generated. May be generated? Is that in case something breaks off the figure or the gun? And then that's swallowable? Boy. Ooh, they cover their bases these days, don't they? But they are saying Krssantan is a big boy. On the other side, my favorite promo shot, that's too close, back up. The at ease pose. You see everything. You see the silhouette, you see the stature, you see the accessories. That's all the info I need. On the top, a whole lot of nothing. On bottom, legalese barcode. Let's get this open. Now we enter the tomb of Krssantan. You have the cardboard, and it's taped to the back. Okay, we get it. You don't want stuff rummaging around inside the box. You'll have hibernation sickness. This may not surprise some of you, but I could not be happier. In fact, I feel like this is as close to perfect as you could probably get with this character in plastic form. And I've already seen some of the arguing online about sizes and details and this and that, but stick with me. I'll prove it to you. Well, okay, one thing right off the bat that is inaccurate is he doesn't have the scar on his eye. But if you get close enough, you can see that the sculpt is there, this bumpy ridge in between the hairs, and I think this one too. If that was just painted that reddish, purplish, pinkish color, it would stand out nicely and it would look like the show. There's nothing below the eye as far as I can tell though. The hair may be parted slightly, but there's not any ridge. There's not any place for that paint to go. But look at the eyes and the teeth peering out of there, like a classic Planet of the Apes character. That's the cool thing about costumes like this. You can see the humanity peering out. Has that hunch look, that lumbering forward, but I'm still agile and will kick your ass if I need to. These braids hanging down with the gold color on them, and that gold does match the armor, but I look at it and the patina is kind of weird. There's almost a translucency to it, which I'm not saying is wrong, I just didn't expect that. Because then I look closer and the detail work inside the sculpted ridges and the spikes sticking up and this design work on the chest piece and then down at the belt, so intricate, so nice. I do notice the paint on these cartridges running under is kind of sloppy, like the brown from the straps running across just kind of bleeds out, or the gold didn't cover. Kind of the same thing on this side. Well, okay, extra gold coming down onto the brown, but they're pretty clean on the top ones. You know, the visual focus. Right there. I don't know what this is hanging off the belt. Some kind of fur, almost Chewbacca colored. Then there's this pouch on the back with some nice weathering to it. Well, okay, it is just kind of splashed on there, but you get the idea. Bringing that gold back in for the knuckle dusters, have a nice sculpt of that. It sticks out. I don't remember what these look like in the show, actually. There's some gold on the inside of the grip and then on the spikes. And then there's the fur sculpt. It calls back nicely to the Chewbacca figure with the hair hanging down over the joints, kind of hide those. Same thing on the hands, almost like a clump of fur just matted down over them. The crotch cover, which I know it's fur, the whole thing is fur. He's covered in fur, but the way it works in action figure form, it is almost a loincloth, and I like that it's shortened down because it shows a lot of leg. And that was the thing about my custom that I could never nail, because there's a thickness to it, and then it kind of tapered in for the ankle, but then out again for the foot. That's because he's got such big tootsies. And they actually sculpted, well, okay, there is some flatness to it because it's an action figure. It needs to stand on the shelf, but there are some ridges to the sole of the foot and then the ankle down here, and it's all painted. There's also a break mid-torso for articulation, and then, is there something right there? No, I think this is an overlay attached to this. Yeah, it seems to be all one piece, and then the belt is separate from that. So on mine, out of the package, the belt was kind of skewed over to the side, so I was able to keep this in place while pushing the belt over. Oh, forgot to point out that there's also some dreads or braids on the back too. This one long one coming down to here, a shorter one, and then one over to that side. That is part of the sculpt here though, so it bends at the bottom of the fur, not all the way up here. There is some whitish gray wash, heavy up here on the head for the forehead, and then his Colonel Sanders goatee there, a little bit of mustache. Dry brushed on the front of the arms, around the elbow, and then down at the legs, mostly centered at the thigh, but there may be, no, that's just plastic sheen down here. On the back, they grabbed some of those hair strands with the gray, but for the most part, there's nothing like we kind of see on a lot of figures when it comes to the back. And even with all this fur and all this armor, well, I say all this armor, it could have been covering the arms and everything, but the shoulder pads coming out like they do, just compressed in on the shoulders, they tried to put as much articulation as they could into here, but then it's hindered by the design itself. There's butterflies, but because of the shape, you can't really reach across. And then, like I said, these shoulder pads pressing here, you can get the arm up to about right there before it starts forcing, and then out, kind of the same thing because of the shape. It's a big old spiky pad. It's a big turtle shell in the way. And then all the hair on the head coming down and conforming around the torso is going to get in the way of the neck. That's just physics. They did do a good job of keeping it free for the most part. Am I going over articulation, or I'm just talking about it before actually going into it? Up at the top, there is, I'm going to keep pushing until something happens. There is a dumbbell joint like we see with the later Chewbacca's. Get on there. There you go. So it does its best to look up and down. A little bit of tilt on the ball, but it's mostly shift at the bottom of the dumbbell. And even that's not a super amount. Left and right, it does get in the way. You can get to about right there and right there. Shifts forward, shifts back. Rotation, crash, hinge, crash. The elbow cut goes down a ways, but again, because of the thickness and the fur, it reaches 90 if you really press on it. Rotation, there is a hinge in and out. Dumbbell joint mid-torso, maybe, or ball or something, can crunch, can arc, can tilt, and then rotation. This is a soft piece, so the ball coming out to the hip goes up to here, goes back, out. Oh, now come on, I'm zooming out for that. Look at this. Pow! No thigh cut, but because of the space they left around the ball at the hip, you do get some rotation there. I forgot to mention that the elbow is a hinge and swivel, or did I just talk about the hinge? Something. There's swivel there. The knee reminded me of that because it is a hinge and swivel. Goes up to not quite 90 and then swivels in and out. Hair hanging down around the big foot. Big foot. Hinge at the ankle goes back a little, forward some. Front facing pin for rocker. For accessories, there is this rifle that is specifically Krssantan's. That's why Krssantan is coming with it. I don't know where I was going when I started that sentence. Are the sights a Wookiee patent? Because that's on top of Chewbacca's crossbow too, right? I love the bluing on the end of the silver barrel though, because that just means he's taken a lot of shots, enough to discolor the barrel itself. He's just... I've seen some comments about the size, and while I did research about the character himself, I didn't really get into the gun. But I did receive a 3D printed version a while back, and it's essentially the same size, so somebody else had the same idea. Although the scope, sight things are in a different place. So what do I know? Unfortunately, there are a lot of things going on in all the places that are needed in order to hold a rifle properly. That's my fancy way of saying there's no way in hell he's gonna be able to put this on his shoulder and well, okay, where are we going with this? Well, that's not terrible. I've seen worse, but that's about as close as I can get. Maybe you can do better. But he can do the walking down the street just holding it pose perfectly. Ooh, and I like those 2 little red buttons. That's pretty cool. But if you don't want him holding the blaster, there is a peg right here, and there's a peg hole in the back. There's a shape to it, so when you plug it in, it's not going to rotate around. It's in position. And that looks pretty good. Hell, that's almost more natural than him actually holding it. Well, that's all fine and dandy. I can talk about sculpt and articulation and accessories all day long, but when it comes to size, that's what some people seem to have a problem with. But I'm here to tell you again, I'm pretty damn happy. Krssantan stands at 6 7/8, or 6.9 according to the package. Kerry Jones, the actor inside the suit, is 6'7". So technically, in 1/12 scale, the Black Series Krssantan is slightly large. Now, I get patting the feet, wanting him to look a bit bigger, camera angles and everything, but numbers. Bringing in the Hasbro Star Wars Black Series Mandalorian Season 2 Boba Fett, because for some stupid reason they haven't made a book of Boba Fett yet. And Fennec Shand, this is what I picture whenever I put these 3 characters together in my head. Tamura Morrison is 5'9", Ming-Na Wen is 5'4". This Boba Fett stands at 5 7/8 with the helmet on, which is close to 5'9". And then Fennec stands at 5 3/8, which is damn close to 5'4". Plus you take this picture into account, which granted, Krssantan is slightly in the background, the rest are forward. Boba Fett and Fennec come up to his shoulder pad somewhere in there. Looks just as good with the Bandai SH Figure Arts Book of Boba Fett, and there's... it's a later Mando. He's got that thigh pad. Flipping back to Hasbro Star Wars Black Series, here is their Cad Bane and Cobb Vanth from Book of Boba Fett. Just some cowpokes fighting it out in the desert. But it seems like a lot of people have a problem with this, Chewbacca being this much taller than Krssantan. But look how much wider Krssantan is. Again, Kerry Jones is 6'7". Peter Mayhew, 7'3". I'm not going to measure this one again because we know that that's pretty much correct. While this Chewbacca is 7 3/8 inches, which is pretty close to 7'3". So this is correct. It just looks wrong because a lot of people assume that Krssantan should stand as tall as Chewbacca. And if you're basing that on the comic books, you might as well go back and buy this Krssantan because he's based on the comic books. And that means these two are the same size. But no, it's just easy reuse, even though this is accurate to some of his comic book appearances, and that's exactly what Hasbro marketed it as. Now, here's your Disney Plus TV show accurate Krssantan, which just happens to look like other comic book appearances. It kind of switched out between these two. Oh, internet. And yeah, I did dirty up and dull down everything here. So that goes with my Dr. Aphra. This will go with my Boba Fett. And like I said I would, here is my custom Krssantan and my custom Chewbacca. I didn't set out to make him this tall. That's just what I ended up with using the Select Chewbacca body. And I took that Select Chewbacca head and put it onto a Black Series body, and here's this. This Krssantan is larger than Chewbacca, like a lot of people want. So if somebody wants to pay me $1,000, $2,000 for this, hit me up. I almost forgot that I wanted to feature Krssantan next to Wrecker because these are both marketed as deluxes. I was okay with Wrecker because it was all new sculpt. It had to be because he's a big boy. And it's the same deal with Krssantan, who is actually a little wider and a bit taller. So at the end of the day, the only thing that would make this figure better is fists. Well, okay, like I said, the scar paint too. The sculpt is there. It just needs a little paint. So a customizing I will go. Other than that, I'm pretty damn happy, which doesn't surprise. I can already see it. Oh, well, it's Hasbro. Of course, Robo's gonna like it. I guess it could be a little bit more mobile. The articulation's there. It's just the design itself is working against it. There's not much more you can do other than making it real fur and then cloth straps with some metal shoulder pads. But at that point, you're going to be paying way more than deluxe prices. This is now my Black Krssantan. Oh, I'm not going to chuck the custom. It'll go somewhere because I'm proud of that. But again, if somebody wants to pay me a shit ton of money for it, then I may consider letting it go, but just to let you know, you can't play with it. It's just going to stand there like that, looking all badass. But this one's playable. Hey, watch this. It's a toy. That's right. Okay. That's enough of that.